Hello again, friends. I hope you're having a good day. This is Granny's GodPod number 34, talking about the logic of belief. After the youth GodPod, I realised I'd nothing planned for the next Granny's GodPod. So following a friend's suggestion, I asked the Lord to give me the topic. And when I saw how beautifully this dovetails onto the previous youth GodPod, I was just blown away. Somehow, the Lord led me to a sermon on Genesis by Charlie Garrett of the Superior Word Church in America that was based on a discussion of the first principles of logic. It was all new to me, but with the Lord's help I tried to make it simple. Over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle defined a first principle as the first basis from which a thing is known. In other words, a first principle is the basic assumption that cannot be deduced any further. We humans did not invent these principles, we discovered them. The first principles of logic include the modus operandi of communication that the Western world seems to be trying to ignore right now, with the amount of misinformation, cancel culture and half-truths in the mainstream media. You've probably heard of the Cartesian doubt theory, when René Descartes doubted everything until he reached his bottom line: I think, therefore I am. It is our thinking ability that allows us to know that we exist. But not all our thinking is clear, because we don't spend much time thinking about stuff that doesn't interest us, or that doesn't affect our lives very much. Even so, without knowing it, we are accustomed to rely on some of the first principles of logic. There are 12 first principles of logic, or basic principles of reality, in total. But there are 3 major ones that date back to Aristotle, Socrates and Plato. The first is the principle of existence. Being is. I can't deny that I exist, because I have to exist to make such a claim. This principle reminds us of what God says in Exodus 3:14, when he tells Moses to say to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. The second principle is the principle of identity. Being is being. A watch is a watch. It is not a planet or a cup of juice. This principle enables communication, because if we don't define exactly and truthfully what we mean, we won't understand each other. We all need to name something using the same word. The third principle is the principle of non-contradiction, which St. Thomas Aquinas said was the highest law of these 3. Being is not non-being. A man cannot be both a man and a tree at the same time. Human beings are different than trees, and to say otherwise is absurd. Furthermore, someone who does not believe in the law of non-contradiction cannot believe the opposite, because that would be self-defeating. I'll add one more principle right now, and that is the principle of the excluded middle, which is that something is either being or non-being. It has to be one thing or another. It cannot be both. If it was a bit of both, it would be something else. If the world doesn't seem to acknowledge these basic principles, what problems will our younger people face? Unless we speak the truth, how can we communicate? Unless we can trust people to speak the truth rather than their truth, how can we believe anything they say? because they are disrupting the very foundation of communication and the basic principles of logic. This is one of the reasons why free speech is so important. If speech is inhibited, how can we judge that what we are told is true? Without truth, a society can be manipulated. There are already comedians who say our language has been manipulated so much that there are so many things they cannot say for fear of being accused of racism or hate speech that there is no future for them. One of the common challenges to Christianity is, how can we know the Bible is true? So people obviously think that truth is a desirable quality. Peter J. Williams and Richard Borkham have written extensively on this topic, which I won't deal with here. On one hand, I think we can allow a little flexibility with truth. For example, a friend of my cousin produced a family history for her, but got the date of my mother's death mixed up with one of her sisters. Did that make the whole thing wrong? No. But when somebody deliberately gives 17 lies in a TV programme that are then proved to be false, it totally destroys any credibility that person had. Truth can also suffer through a hidden agenda. For example, when a black criminal was killed by a white police officer, there is no doubt that, first, the incident happened and should not have happened, and second, the incident would not have happened if the police had not been called because the criminal was trying to pay a shopkeeper with counterfeit money. I don't particularly follow American news, but I know there have been a accumulation of events that led to the uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement. As followers of Jesus, we know that all lives matter. But there are hidden truths here. Firstly, about the same time there was a white criminal killed by a white policeman, but this was never mentioned by mainstream coverage. Recently, 3 black policemen were shot while trying to arrest a robber, and this has not made the mainstream news either. I used to think that our BBC could be relied on to give us the truth of what was going on in the world, but they rarely report on Christian genocides, for example, and they are reluctant to call out a terrorist act if it is carried out by an Islamist extremist, as happened recently with the murder of the MP Sir David Armes. The Mayor of London said Sir David had passed away. He did not simply pass away, he was murdered in cold blood. Our young people need to be able to look at the world and distinguish truth from half-truths and downright lies, so that they can recognise when they and their society are being manipulated. The current move towards what a person feels being the truth is destructive for society and goes against the first principles of logic. Well, I hope that won't keep you awake at night. I don't know why, but I keep thinking of a comedian wondering why Stephen Hawking never changed his original computerised voice, but suggested no one would have taken him seriously with a Brummie accent. I've got a theory. Have you really, Stephen? Off you go then. Hopefully that will leave you with a smile. Have a blessed day.